Hey, everybody. This is John here with Charlie on the Penn State Roundtable podcast. Again, a lot to talk about when it comes to Penn State, Charlie. But, we got to get into, last week's game against Indiana. Penn State had them beat. And unfortunately, in what seems like, typical Penn State fashion, if I can say, it didn't come away with the win. And, obviously – the year as a whole has been frustrating. I understand, maybe some didn't expect Penn State to win that game, but you have the number 2 team in the country. You're at home, you have them beat, and you can't get the job done. So what were kind of your takeaways there, Charlie?
Yeah, I mean, well, it came down to that last drive, right? I mean, Penn State, like you said, John, they had him right where they wanted. And then for Fernando Mendoza, who is, as of right now, I think probably the odds-on favorite to be the first quarterback taken in the draft, definitely up there in terms of Heisman odds, had the drive of his life, just absolutely money against that Penn State defense, who had played well mostly throughout that game. The more shocking thing to me was just how, it seemed like Penn State couldn't decide what they wanted to do defensively on that last drive. It was like, do we want to blitz? Do we want to play back more in coverage? And when they were putting pressure on Mendoza, it was working. He looked a little more uncomfortable back there. And then when they would decide to play back a little bit more, that's when he was kind of dicing them up. So, you got to give credit to Indiana. That's why they're the second best team in the country right now. That's why Mendoza is so highly touted. Yeah. But, if you're Penn State, that one hurts. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think you kind of put it best, too, with Mendoza and Penn State's defense. Before that drive, he was 15 of 25 or something for 140 yards. They had him boxed up the whole game. And it's funny in a way because coming into the year, I think you look at Penn State's, especially the pass rush, and you're like, this can be something legit like that. That's why the team was really as, highly regarded as it was. And then again, they got to him a little bit. And like you said, you got to give him credit because, even on that, game winning drive, excuse me, he got hit a couple times and he just made some sick throws. I mean, you can only keep guys like that bottled up for so long. I do think for Penn State, one thing that was a little concerning in the fourth quarter, I believe there's about 2:30 left in the game. They get the ball back and you have a chance to ice it completely if you just get a first down pretty much. And I don't know if Terry Smith doesn't have any trust in his, young quarterback. I get he's a third string guy, whatever he is right now. But you run the ball and you pretty much just say, here, Indiana, here's your chance to win. Now, if Penn State was in a different position and, there's 8-1 going into that game and you have to play conservative, I'd get it. But you were 3-5. There's really nothing, to me at least, to sit back and say, let's just play conservative here. Let's give this guy, the Heisman favorite, the ball with a chance to win. They did. And Mendoza obviously made him pay. I think, again, credit to Indiana. But it just felt like another lost opportunity for Penn State. And I feel like we say that far too much.
Yeah, it's definitely been kind of one of those underlying factors on this losing streak here. Just, I don't know if it's a lack of aggression, but just in those specific scenarios where maybe, you got nothing to lose, maybe you should put your, pedal to the metal. And it just seems like they either are reluctant to do so or don't believe they can. So
yeah. And what's funny too is I think even with Drew Aller, and you look at when Franklin was still here, if there was always one gripe about the offense, it's like it's boring. And I don't want to say it didn't work because last year obviously with Katron and Singleton and even Singleton on Saturday was incredible. But it just never seems like Penn State takes that big shot downfield or anything like that. And it's a bit disappointing. And I guess, that kind of leads into our next topic here about recruits flipping. Now, we saw that happen once again this morning, actually. Penn State lost a recruit with David Davis flipping to North Carolina. Just wrote something up on that, which people will be able to find on the Roundtable Penn State page later tonight. I get the idea of flipping from Penn State right now. I'm not going to sit here and say that, recruits shouldn't do it. But if your reasoning is that you want to win and you want to play for a storied program, then I don't really know how you can justify flipping to North Carolina right now. And that's no disrespect to Bill Belichick. And, UNC has improved. It's played better over the past couple of weeks. But if we're being honest here for a second, if you think Penn State was kind of a dumpster fire the past month, then UNC has been for 10 years probably at this point. But again, no disrespect to the kids who are just, decommitting and flipping. I understand the reason behind it. I did it in high school as well, so I can't complain. But I think some recruits could be overreacting a little bit. So what do you think, Charlie?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something to be said there about the, what it means for a 4-star, 5-star recruit to flip from, a story program like Penn State to go to a struggling one like North Carolina. I mean, I think that's kind of a testament to James Franklin, right? I mean, that's who these guys committed for in the first place. That's who they, I'm sure first talked to when they were first speaking about which school they wanted to go to. And that's kind of what was going to happen when you let go of a guy like Franklin midseason like that. I mean, some of these guys, they wanted to play for him. They expected to play for him. And now as they're finishing up their high school careers, he's not going to be there. So why keep your commitment to a school that, changed the coach that you committed to? So not that Penn State still isn't going to be, a great program without James Franklin, but the guys who promised to play for him are obviously going to reconsider things once he's gone.
Yeah. Interesting point too that, I think could get lost in some of the flip stuff is at Penn State, at least. So my freshman year when I was on the baseball team, all freshmen have to take an athletes only class, and it counts as like one of your science things. It's like BBH 100 or something, whatever it was. It was a cool class. I had like Micah in it and whatchamacallit. My God, why am I blanking on his name? The Eagles wide receiver now that was drafted in the first round. I don't know why I'm blanking on his name all of a sudden. He was with the Commanders. I'll think of his name.
Dotson.
Yeah, Jahan Dotson. Sorry, geez. So we had some like really cool players in there. But one aspect of that too is that you'll notice for that class specifically, and obviously other classes, a lot of the 2026 graduates now will arrive in December/January after that Christmas break. And they'll get ready for classes. Even Penn State freshmen, as an athlete, you're required to go in the summertime, even if you're a non-football or fall sport player. So a lot of these kids, again, I don't know what Davis is doing, what his plans are, but I knew some of the top end guys in the whatever it was 2018, 2019 class at the time were going to school early. So I do think that could also be a factor there. And obviously it's November. If the kid does plan on, changing schools, a lot of these 2026 graduates have done that. If they are graduating early from high school, you have to really get a move on right now. There's not a lot of time to wait. So that's also a factor here. And I think that's important to bring up. But as you kind of touched on, Charlie, with Franklin, when you commit to a school, especially a school like Penn State, you are going there for more reasons maybe than just Franklin. But at the end of the day, that's probably 80% of the reason, right? I mean, Franklin's telling you what your plan is, if you're going to have a chance to play at all freshman year. Obviously, he's not going to come out maybe to, 90% of the recruiting class and say you're going to play instantly. But you kind of understand like, hey, I have a chance to play here. I got to beat this guy out. And right now, you're probably looking at Penn State and you're like, well, new coach comes in. Are they even going to want me in a month? Or are they going to say, you know what, we're done with every recruit. We want to just change this thing in the portal. So there, excuse me, there is a lot to, factor in with that. So again, I don't agree with flipping from Penn State to UNC, so to say, but I also understand why Davis did it. And you can never fault a young man for doing what's best for him. So we wish him luck here. But sticking on the topic of Franklin, Charlie, and I think we can talk about this probably for a good bit. There's a lot of rumors about where he might end up. Now, some have said, he's going to end up at Arkansas. Some have said he's going to end up at Virginia Tech. Now, if there's one thing that kind of seems obvious with Franklin, it's that he's going to go to a program that's probably in a pretty good position money-wise. And excuse me, got a cold over here. And the thing for him is probably going to be taking a program with some good money, but has struggled a bit over the past few years and trying to rebuild that. So I think he did similar things at Penn State. Obviously, he took the job from Bill O'Brien. O'Brien got the job with all the, unfortunate Sandusky and Paterno sanctions and all the horrible things that happened with that. But Arkansas is an interesting case, Charlie. So I'm curious to hear what you have to maybe say about Franklin being a lead candidate there.
Yeah, well, I mean, It's kind of like a similar situation, like you're just saying, where he's going to be taking over for a school program that has a lot of rich college football history, hasn't had as much success in recent years, and similar to how we found Penn State, after Bill O'Brien kind of stabilized things and he came in, he can probably do the same thing for Arkansas. I'm not too familiar with their NIL situation and how much money they're going to have available in terms of, what can we pay players and what can we recruit here. But for a program like Arkansas, who, like I said, in recent years hasn't been the most successful, I mean, Franklin seems like a guy who can come in, kind of, jumpstart the culture, jumpstart the program, and kind of turn things around there.
Yeah, similar to you, obviously, with the Arkansas front and NIL in general. These figures aren't public, so we can go out and say, Oregon spending $22 million on this roster and Ohio State spending 27 here. But the reality is that unless you're in the building and you're maybe a general manager or a donor, you probably have no clue what these numbers look like. Now, when I look at Arkansas, I think in a weird way, their year this season kind of reminds me of Franklin at Penn State in general. So they played number 7 Ole Miss in September, lost by 6 points. On the road, had a chance to beat them, but lost. 3 weeks later, they lose to Tennessee, a top 25 ranked Tennessee team, on the road by 3. A week later, you play number 3 Texas A&M and lose by 3. So, again, you need someone to get you over that hump, obviously, because you are right there. And obviously, Arkansas has gone through a lot this year, similar to Penn State, and making changes and whatnot. But you're 0-5 in the SEC. You're 2-7 overall. But you are kind of on the cusp of winning some of those games. Now, we said that at Penn State for 11 and a half years, and I get being on the cusp is never ideal. But I also think for a program like Arkansas, you almost have to feel okay with, we can win 10 games. And if we win 10 games in the SEC, I would say probably about 80% of the time you're going to be in the college football playoff, depending on what your losses look like, and depending on what your wins are. But I guess, Charlie, the one thing I look at with Franklin and him in the SEC in general, and again, this isn't a knock on him, but more so just the facts of what we've seen in recent years. If you're going from the Big Ten and you couldn't beat, Oregon, Ohio State, and Michigan, who are, top 10 teams in their own right most years, why should Arkansas fans or any fan where he goes thinks that he can beat the likes of Ole Miss, he can beat Alabama, he can beat Georgia, he can beat A&M, who apparently has this godly NIL fund with, oil money or whatever they say out there, Texas, Ole Miss. I mean, we can keep going on and on. And I do think in some sense the SEC can be overrated at times and people love to hype it up. But the reality here is that it 1 through 20, whatever it is, 1 through 15, there's better teams in the SEC than there are in the Big Ten. So if you're Arkansas in that situation, Charlie, are you thinking, Franklin can get us over that hump maybe?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not a guarantee, but I mean, if you look back at his, I think it was like 2-3 seasons at Vanderbilt, I think he had a few quality, ranked wins there. And obviously that's an SEC program right there. So, I think there's reason to believe that he could, maybe turn it around in terms of what he was able to accomplish at Penn State and kind of, recognize what went wrong there and fix those problems at a program like Arkansas. I think if it's reasonable to believe that he could, flip that script there.
Yeah. And I think what's funny too about, Franklin in general here is that obviously losing a Penn State job is never ideal. I'm not going to sit here and say he wanted to get fired. But the time was obviously up. And as you look ahead though for Franklin, and I get the frustration maybe behind getting fired, I don't think it's unfair to suggest that he can end up with a better job. Now, I don't want to say that Arkansas is a better job than Penn State because I'd be lying to everybody, and it's not true just based off history and whatnot and facilities and whatever we want to say. But if he ends up at a place like Florida, if he ends up at a place like Auburn or Florida State, if they fire Mike Norvell, you probably look at it and think, if their money situation with NIL, which I think we all know with Florida, Auburn, and Florida State should be just fine, if not even better than Penn State, he probably will end up with a better gig, so to say, for himself. And it'll be interesting. And I think an important part of that as well is that, with these recruits, Franklin can get guys from New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Ohio, good people. I'm not going to sit here and say they aren't. say it isn't. But the reality is that, those Florida recruits, those Georgia recruits start getting into Louisianas and the Carolinas. There's more high school football players. There's more marquee prospects. So that's definitely a factor in this as well. I think too, another point, and we'll kind of go to our next part here, is you look at losses like Indiana, and even if Penn State had won, does it do a lot for the program this year? I wouldn't say yes. I don't think if Penn State beat Indiana, you'd see guys like Davis, not flipping. You're not going to have recruits who are halfway in, halfway out the door right now saying, I'm staying here because we beat the number 2 team in the country. Had the year gone as, Penn State was hoping for, I think you see a different situation. But the reality here is that, Penn State hasn't done enough throughout the season. So even a top 5 win, it isn't going to do a lot. Now, if you had beaten Ohio State the week before and then beat Indiana, it's a different story. And I try to say this as nicely as possible. And I give credit to Indiana because, Kurt has really done a great job over there, Sig. But you don't really think of Indiana as like this marquee college football program. So you're not really going to feel, too good. If you had played Georgia and at a conference game, you beat them, it's a different story, as crazy as it sounds, even though Indiana's ranked higher. And while that might be the case for, maybe alum, maybe fans, and maybe even some players, it doesn't change the fact that, some of these players do feel almost like the weight of the world is on their shoulders right now. And I think Nick Dawkins kind of said it best, and I wrote something on it. So I'll have a quote here from Dawkins. He said, "We work so hard. We miss Christmas. We miss Easter. We miss Thanksgiving. We miss every holiday. I miss birthdays. I miss weddings. I miss everything. And usually winning excuses those things to your family, and I have no excuses. It's just really embarrassing personally for myself. All of us, all of us are frustrated. Fans are frustrated. I'm frustrated. Coaches are frustrated. Because to be quite honest with you, we're thinking, what do we need to do? What is it? Why? So it definitely sounds, like players are getting to this point where they just don't really know what to do anymore. But one thing I do want to say, and that's for Dawkins, and that's for Aller, who got hurt and maybe wasn't playing as well to start the year, and that's for Singleton and Katron Allen, who struggled at times. I think it's important, especially for young kids, young men like this, that they go back at night and don't take, every loss to the chest. It's not one player's fault when it comes to what's gone on this year. It's not even 2 players' fault. It's not a unit. It's been everything on both sides of the football.
Yeah, most definitely. And it does really kind of reminds you like that, once again, these aren't like professional athletes. These are college athletes. They're amateurs. This isn't their overall well-being unless you're shooting to be an NFL superstar. But for a guy like Chase Fisher, yeah, you got to hope that he's not taking this to heart, and he understands that, hey, even though this you guys had such high expectations, you're not achieving those expectations. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
And maybe that's kind of part of the reason why you got some people, switching up their commitments. I'm sure some of these recruits talk to the current athletes on the team, talk to the players, and kind of understand just the vibes and the situation around Penn State right now. And it's just there's just so many unknowns and question marks considering the coaching situation. And got to imagine that it's incredibly hard for some of these players, especially the ones who have put in 3-4 years of time here at Penn State. And I think we mentioned last week. My sister goes to Penn State. She was at most of the recent home games, especially the whiteout. And some of those Penn State fans, man, they can be real tough, John. I'm sure going there. She told me after the whiteout game that they essentially got booed off the field by their own fans. So like I can't even imagine what it's like playing for a school like Penn State, putting your blood, sweat, and tears and effort into it, and then you don't get the outcome you wanted, and then your fans just so disappointed, and you kind of kick you on your way out the door.
Yeah, it's funny you say that with Penn State fans, because I believe at the time I was about 15 or 16, and I took my first visit to Penn State. I took an unofficial visit, and at least for the baseball program when I was being recruited, Penn State, you'd go to a football game, and then obviously you meet with the coaches, whatnot. But the big thing there was to go to the football game, and you got like field passes and stuff like that, and they gave you kind of the tours, and one of the first things my family and I saw when we were on our first visit, I think they were playing Indiana at the time. When you upon into going to the stadium, and this was shortly after or a little bit after the Paterno/Bill O'Brien, whole thing, but people still had a fixation for Paterno at the time. And we walked in and there's literally like a vigil for him, and it's just like candles lit up and all this. And I'm like, wow, like these people are really into their, college football. And obviously when you go to Penn State, you can kind of see like, hey, these people are like, this is what they have in the middle of nowhere, central Pennsylvania. And it's funny because you look at, the towns surrounding it, and there's really nothing there besides State College and just, the college town itself. But you get a lot of locals each and every week too, and just like diehard Penn State fans who aren't even alum and stuff, but they love Penn State football. And, it's something that makes sense, but it's also something that, if they don't play as well as they do, it can almost feel like the campus is on fire, if that makes sense. So, I do say though that, right now for the students there, obviously, it sucks as, bluntly as possible. You go to Penn State to go watch college football games. That's definitely part of the reason why some kids go there. It's a lot of fun. It's a big party school. And obviously when the football team wins, you have more fun at parties and stuff like that. But like you said, I also think it's important to remember now that, I get they're getting paid and stuff like that. But, these are 20-year-old kids. They don't want to lose either. And I think people forget too, like, they have study hall, they have practice at 5 a.m. They've been doing everything for the past, 8 months getting ready for this season. And they sacrifice a lot in life. I get it. They get a degree for free, they get paid, but it's still not the normal life. So we have to, kind of take what we say with some respect to the program and to the players, and understand that they're just as frustrated, if not 100 times more, because they're the ones being out there. But to your point, Charlie, Penn State fans can definitely be, I don't want to say crazy, but they get into it like almost none other. So it's interesting to see. But hopefully Penn State will get its first Big Ten win of the year this week, and maybe fans will be a little happier. Maybe the students will be a little happier and enjoy some fun. Now, I know Michigan State's, not very good. And, again, similar to that Indiana game, if you beat Michigan State, it's not like it saves your season by any means. But Penn State doesn't have a Big Ten win right now. And if somebody had said that coming into the year, I think you and I both would have probably laughed in their face to not have at least one. It doesn't even sound real that we're saying it right now. No matter how bad Penn State's year is, it should never get to the point where they don't have a Big Ten win. But the odds are saying that Penn State is going to win this game. I believe it opened up at 7.5, and when I checked last night, it was 6.5. The odds mean everything, obviously not. But it is a good indication that Penn State is favored on the road, Charlie. So what are your thoughts entering this one?
Yeah, I think Penn State's got a great shot to snap that 6-game losing streak. And like you said, John, pick up that first Big Ten win of the season. That'll be a nice, hopefully a nice monkey off their back. And, they finished the season with Nebraska and Rutgers, and I think this is a great first place to start, of kind of not to salvage the season, but just to kind of end it on a positive note after such a disappointing start and what was such a high expectation season. And then, like you said, Michigan State just not that they're world beaters. They have the exact same record as Penn State. They're 3-6 as well, also 0-6 in Big Ten play. So, Penn State, they're going to look to ride those running backs, I'm sure. And hopefully get that first Big Ten win of the season.
Yeah, if there's a time to do it, it's now. I do think even if Penn State were to lose this game, and now I don't think they're going to, but if they were, you probably feel like they can beat Nebraska and Rutgers, especially without Rioli for Nebraska. I'm a Jersey guy. Charlie's a Jersey guy. I think we can both say that Rutgers football is almost an embarrassment to the state at times, and it sucks because it should never be. But if you don't beat Rutgers, I'd be pretty embarrassed if I was Penn State. I don't care if you're 0-10 with the worst team ever. That's a team you have to beat, especially for recruiting and stuff like that. I do know, a lot of the Bergen Catholic, Don Bosco, St. Joe's guys up here are between Rutgers, Penn State, and some other Big Ten schools, so you always want to beat them. But we'll stick kind of to Michigan State a little bit more right now. As Charlie said, same record. They have lost 6 games in a row. So same to Penn State. But this just feels like a game where you almost just have to kind of come out and put them in the dirt early. If you look at Michigan State throughout the year, I mean, if we're being honest, they haven't really done a whole lot. They beat Boston College, who's kind of an embarrassment in their own right over there, up there in Boston. Youngstown State they beat, and Western Michigan. But when you get into Big Ten play, I don't want to say haven't competed, but against the upper echelon teams of the Big Ten, lost to 14 by USC, lost by 11 to Nebraska, 25 to Indiana. I mean, I get it. Penn State has played poorly, but there's really no excuse not to win this game.
No, especially considering, how close Penn State was able to play Indiana compared to Michigan State. I mean,
exactly.
That right there should hopefully be the signifier that Penn State's got at least a better program here than what the Spartans got. So
yeah, well, obviously we'll have some talk about that next week, either Wednesday or Thursday. You'll be able to find out what we thought about the game, and hopefully it's maybe a happier discussion. We don't have to talk about recruits flipping or anything like that. I do think in the next few weeks we should get some noise on where Penn State's headed with this coaching search, what they plan with interim head coach Terry Smith, and on if he wants to be a GM, which we can talk about next week too. I think we'll hear some more on that. But for now, this is the second edition of the Roundtable Penn State podcast. I'm John. That's Charlie, and we'll be back sometime next week to discuss more. Thanks, everyone.